I have a new book coming soon, I hope. It's a very experimental, edgy kind of book. I think one of the first of its kind in the country, perhaps in the world, who knows. I co-wrote it with a Swedish writer who we had never met before. We met first at a workshop, um, and the idea was that we would put, I was part of the organizers of the workshop as well. We would put one Indian writer, one Swedish writer, and one illustrator from either country into groups, and we were to make books. Oriane Pasha, who is the Swedish writer, had never written for a younger audience. The illustrator had never illustrated for an older audience, and I had sort of straddling the two worlds. Anyhow, we set off on this seemingly impossible journey, and eventually Oriane came and stayed with me in Delhi. Then I went and stayed with him in Sweden. He lives on a beautiful island, and we struggled trying to sort of mash up the two stories and make one story of it. It wasn't working. So then we decided, let's do it as the same story but told from two points of view. So in fact, so the book is called Two because we were two strangers meeting in a strange land. The two characters are two strangers meeting in a strange land. Neither has, and we set it in Goa because the experiment started off in Goa. And right at the very beginning, we thought, what should we peg it on? And that afternoon, we went out on a boat and we saw dolphins, and both of us looked at each other and said, dolphins, let's do dolphins, somewhere in the book. So it turned into a sort of magical, mythical, reality fiction. It's kind of all kinds of things rolled into one. So it's two stories told from two points of view. Or no, rather the same story told from two points of view. I've done it from an Indian boy's point of view. Oriane has done it from a Swedish girl's point of view, of course, just to make it more difficult that he would write the girl and I would write the boy. And then the challenges were not yet over because he writes in Swedish and then someone would translate into English, then it would come to me, then I'd read it, then I'd respond and I'd send my bit of the story back and it would be translated into Swedish and then he would work on it. Fine, all right, that also was a practical matter dealt with, but it still wasn't over because I think the Indian idiom, and especially the idiom of my character, the boy, and the Swedish idiom was so different. And so when we were translating some of my lines, my words into Swedish, he would look at it and say, this sounds just plain stupid, it doesn't work in Swedish, because my character was very whimsical, perhaps a special child, but I've not stated it, certainly a very isolated person who has a lot of internal whimsy in him. So he meets the sea for the first time, and he's from Rajasthan. He's never experienced water of that magnitude. So the way he stands and he lets the water invite him in, lets the water touch him rather than rushing to the water himself and all of that. So I said he waited till the waves ran up, tickled his toes and invited him in, or my toes and invited me in. And Oriane says, this just sounds plain stupid in Swedish because, and then I realized, Akia furniture, so these straight lines, simple, straight, clear lines, no embellishment. And that's very much how the language is as well. And so my embellishments and the Indianness of what I was writing was very strange. But anyway, so first we were sort of fighting it, and I was fighting his very stark stated, like he has, every sentence is 3 words, and then the next line of 3 words, and the next line of 4 words, and it's just very stark and broken, and I was writing paragraphs and paragraphs. So we were very uncomfortable until we thought, no, isn't that the point of this book, that there are 2 very different voices, 2 very different cultures, and there they come and meet, and then they go into this magical, mystical, mythical space. and I think it worked, and it became quite an exciting book. And then we thought, all right, illustrator, because the illustrator who was to work with us in the group, that didn't work out. Publisher was also a problem. It was too edgy and experimental a book, but Scholastic took it up. And they gave it to, I think she's from NID, so she's a design-oriented person, Garima Gupta. She looked at it and said, oh no, this is a graphic novel waiting to happen. So she's done it in blues and blacks and whites, and it's coming out stunning. And I'm off to Sweden in November to take the book there. It's been quite a journey of some years. To kind of get to wrap my head around this difference, I actually read some Swedish books. I had read some not knowing they were Swedish. So I had read Pippi Longstockings, fabulous books, but very much for a younger audience, and still it had that sort of pared down feel to it, although there's a lot of humor. There's a famous cartoon called Moomin, which used to run in some newspapers. I didn't know it was Swedish, but again had that similar feel to it. I think in Orian's case, perhaps it's even more so in the writer that he is, and in the character he was writing. And mine was more embellished perhaps than some of my other writers, because that was the character he was. He doesn't speak much, but he thinks a lot, and he thinks in a very embellished, whimsical kind of way. I don't know whether it would be generally true, but certainly we had to work at jamming the two things together. But after that experiment, I've been experimenting a lot more with jamming together with storytellers. So I've done some with a Zulu storyteller, an Eskimo, Swiss French-speaking writer for a French-speaking audience, and I didn't speak French. A German for a Hindi-speaking audience. So it's all been, I mean, I think this is a very interesting experiment that I somehow have embarked upon, not very consciously, but it's happening. It's not dry. By sparse, I certainly don't mean it's not emotive. It has its own weight of emotion behind it, and it has, and it's certainly not dry. It's sort of very clean lines, you know. It just, IKEA furniture just came to my mind, and I thought, God, this is IKEA furniture in words. How you pronounce IKEA, I don't know. But yeah, that's how it was. But certainly, I mean, IKEA furniture is beautiful. Those Swedish lines and all are gorgeous to look at, comfortable, as is this book as well, you know. It's gorgeous to look at. It's very comfortable, very clean. You have to read it to find out. I can't be the spoiler, but what I did do was to swim with dolphins. And it was really like I was one of those kids in the book who was there with them, and they got me. And I've read enough and studied dolphins because, through the course of this book. But they got me without reading anything. They really did. Well, Garima, because she turned it into this fabulous, beautifully illustrated book, it's taking more time. So, and I have to leave early November, and actually may not have the book with me, unfortunately. But we're going to make some mock-ups of the book and take it. And one more thing which I want to add, and I hope I'm proved wrong. Getting the book published was not easy because it's such a different idea. But Indian publishers were much more open. And I think Swedish publishers have been very conservative. It doesn't fit into a slot. But Indian publishers were willing to go out of those, specific slots that they have. But we haven't found a Swedish publisher yet. Hopefully we do.